I'm extremely sorry that my microphone is terrible. The one I normally use was not available, and I wanted to get this done on my weekend. I'd rather not wait to have the microphone back. Whatever, it's complicated. Just please bear with me on this with this bad mic for just this once, and thank you. So, I recently played the demo of a work-in-progress Pikmin 2 ROM hack known as Pikmin 2 EX. This video is a review of sorts, but I'm keeping the presentation to a minimum. It's just going to be my voice and the gameplay footage. I'll start with my subjective views on the game to form a narrative, my personal narrative, as to how I played the demo, and then I'm going to explore the demo from an objective standpoint, detailing specifically the design and balancing of the ROM hack, as well as the narrative that it tries to present. One of the points of this video is a message towards the Pikmin hacking community as a whole, with just this hack as an example of your guys' work. If you are a Pikmin 2 hacker, please watch this in full. I am very thankful for the work you are all doing, and I hope to continue seeing new Pikmin experiences come from your work in the future, as long as Nintendo doesn't shut you guys down. Regardless, let us begin. As a Pikmin fan, I am starved for content. Any Pikmin fan can attest to this. The last Pikmin game was generally received as okay at best, and consensus shows that Pikmin 3, while wonderful, still isn't as favored as Pikmin 2. Pikmin fans are just left to replay these games over and over in eagerness of hopefully a new title in the future. Within the community, Pikmin 2 is still considered, despite its flaws, the best in the series. I strongly agree with the consensus, and I very much enjoy replaying Pikmin 2. The core game mechanics are generally reliable. Every time I revisit the game, I can reuse the same strategies. I have the game memorized. Though I'm not a speedrunner, and I will lose Pikmin when I'm careless. I'm not a pro. A general run of the games for me is about 15 to 20 in-game days, so I'm not a pro by any means. I would consider myself a casual player. Anyway, what I wish for in a sequel was just more of the same. I care not for a new story or characters. What I enjoy about the game is the gameplay mechanics. I like Pikmin's gameplay, and I prefer how it was improved in Pikmin 2. Again, these are my subjective feelings and experiences. I do not speak for the community here. Another game that I enjoy very much that is not Pikmin is the series Monster Hunter. I like how every entry retreads the same content over and over, with minor tweaks to the gameplay. I would be content if every year or two Nintendo released a new Pikmin game that just tweaked the gameplay with every new entry. I don't need a lot of new content, I just want the same content, but with tweaks here and there. However, I believe this philosophy doesn't exactly work with Nintendo because in comparing it to, say, Mario or Zelda, they like to create new experiences every time. They like to completely change the gameplay, which is fine, but I just prefer not that. I prefer the same thing over and over and over again. But that's completely my subjective feelings. I know that other people would probably want a new experiences, but I just had to mention that. Regardless, I am faced with a dilemma. I want more Pikmin 2 gameplay, but Nintendo isn't making games for just me. But luckily, there came a solution, in the form of Pikmin 2 ROM hacks. A friend of mine, known online as Jimble, is continuing to push the Pikmin ROM hacking scene, and I support this.
There's a snag right here too! How much stuff is in this sub-level? What? What the hell? This guy's blowing fire!
If Nintendo doesn't give us new games every year, we should be making our own games. Jimble's YouTube channel focuses on showcasing and celebrating the advances of the Pikmin ROM hacking scene. When he first approached me about it, I prepared and played a version of the game which I entitled the European version, which simply added more enemies to the caves to make it more difficult for myself. This is awesome! Oh! I love this! Look, I didn't know there were gonna be seashore floors! This was very refreshing. I kind of got what I wanted. The same gameplay I know and love, but with things that make it new and interesting. even if the changes were minor and were very, very unbalanced. This was a very unfair and silly ROM hack. This is not well made by any means. Like with everyone, I still do also carry that dream of a brand new experience of a Pikmin 4. But it doesn't even really need to be a Pikmin 4. That idea of a new game from the ground up with new enemies to fight, new locations to traverse, and new mechanics to test. Every day the Pikmin hacking community is getting closer to realizing this dream, and one of the big steps that they're taking is this hack, Pikmin 2 EX. I am a little late to play the demo, as life got in the way at the time and I forgot to play it when it came out. Anyway, I finally remembered it existed and I gave it a shot. I played through the whole demo, until the point where it tells me it's over. Now, me, starving for more, ignored this, and at the end of the game I proceeded to continue playing. There was an unreachable sub-level 4 in the first cave of the demo, which I ventured into after I was told that the demo was over. At sub-level 7, the game crashed, and likely so, sub-levels 4 to 6 were unmodified to begin with. They matched the sub-levels of Frontier Cavern of Pikmin 2. I wasn't supposed to go down there anyway. Regardless, after completing it, I had one word to describe this whole ROM hack and the whole experience, and that word was Kaizo. Kaizo is a word that comes from the classic ROM hack titled Kaizo Mario World, and according to Wikipedia, the Japanese word Kaizo simply refers to ROM hacking in the gaming industry, since its literal meaning is reorganize, restructure, or reconstruct. But Kaizo Mario World's prominence means that this term has been used by other hacks to indicate an extreme level of difficulty. This has also led to the term Kaizo hack, meaning a ROM hack of a game intended to be extremely difficult or unfair that is intended to push the difficulty to the limits of human capabilities. Or as Urban Dictionary puts it more clearly, Kaizo, a Japanese word meaning modified or hacked, a genre of ridiculously difficult video game hacks that tend to feature a lot of trial and error gameplay. Anything resembling a Kaizo hack in difficulty. What I gather from that is that Kaizo can refer to both simple ROM hacks in general, as well as difficult ROM hacks. However, for this review, I'm using the definition that means a difficult ROM hack, that it is difficult to complete. The ROM hack of Pikmin 2 EX demo was released on a Discord server that is managed by Jimble, and the official release stated, Pikmin 2 EX public demo, build 3.1, that's the version I played, by Breadbug Techie, that's the developer. This is the description. Do you think Pikmin 2 is too easy, and the likes of Lands of Torture are too hard? Do you perhaps want an entirely new experience with a brand new story, characters, and the like to explore? Then look no further than Pikmin 2 EX, a semi-overhaul of the original game. Pikmin 2 EX aims to make the game harder than the original Pikmin 2, but still keeps things fair, as long as you're willing to take your time and learn enemy patterns. EX features reskins of the existing overworld maps to have new themes, as well as having been completely restructured from the ground up. The caves, on the other hand, are both completely new and completely unique. For clarification, Lands of Torture is a brutal Pikmin 2 ROM hack that is 100% undoubtedly Kaizo. The most important point to make out here is the one where it says Pikmin 2 EX aims to make the game harder than the original Pikmin 2, but still keeps things fair, as long as you're willing to take your time and learn enemy patterns. This will be important for later, as this is the only form of description given to the player before playing. We will expect this to be true. Now, for a proper analysis, an objective analysis, I'll have to walk through the entirety of the demo, and I will do this. But I have to first make a subjective comment on how the game looks. As a reskin, it's wonderful. It's the best I've seen, and I'm sure the community agrees on this. The changes to the characters and environment blend perfectly into Pikmin 2's engine. The desert looks amazing, the shadowy woods look creepy. I was immersed fully with the aesthetic design. There are limitations to the engine and the hacks, so we cannot ignore that there are some bizarrenesses to the cutscenes. It is attempting to be the same as the base Pikmin 2 game, so there are obviously limits to what the hackers can pull off, but it's clear that they're trying their hardest to push the boundaries, and I have to say, amazing job. Okay, now for the walkthrough. So day 1 is beat for beat the same as Pikmin 2's day 1. The ship passes through trees and hits one by accident, the captains are separated. You have to bring them back together through overcoming the paper bag obstacle, and the first treasure you collect is a battery. It is explained to us that the goal of the game is not to collect 10,000 Pokos, but rather recharge the ship's battery so it can make an interstellar flight and leave the planet. This is similar to the plot of Pikmin 1, but there's no ship parts to collect, it's batteries, and there's no time pressure. I believe that this is a limitation of the engine being Pikmin 2 not having a time pressure, but honestly, I'm thankful. This is a subjective view. I don't want to be rushed through a game under a time pressure, and it's kind of important too with a point I'll be making later on the comment on learning enemy patterns. I must also note that similarly to Pikmin 2, you start with an encounter with the Dwarf Bulborb. This time he's orange, not red. Thankfully, in this hack, orange Bulborbs are red Bulborbs. Their stats, or maybe textures, were exchanged. Of course, we don't know this. It doesn't tell you, and it doesn't really need to, as if this was a full-fledged Pikmin game, new players wouldn't know the difference to begin with. Unfortunately, this is a ROM hack, and we should believe that no one would play this unless they've played Pikmin 2 first. So yes, this is deception, and it's either strictly designed to trick the Pikmin 2 veteran, or it's an aesthetic choice made by the designer of the hack. Perhaps they like orange Bulborbs over red Bulborbs. Perhaps they simply want to change things. However, this is still deception. We're entering a brand new world here. It is now safe to assume none of the enemy creatures that we will face will match their original counterparts. This forces the player to relearn everything they know about Pikmin 2. Now the player will be rethinking how he views this hack, and he'll be saying, this is not a more difficult Pikmin 2, this is a brand new experience from the ground up. We'll take this into consideration as we continue. We finished day 1 the exact same way as day 2, by bringing the battery back to the ship. I should note that the distance between base camp and the battery is significantly farther than the original game, which was already a major length of distance. An issue with the Valley of Repose to begin with is that it functions as a gauntlet of obstacles and enemies from the base camp to the Frontier Cavern. It's essentially a long, straight line, very much like Pikmin 1's final trial. Base camp and Louie's crash site are designed as a tutorial area, and their layout matches this. Furthermore, Louie's crash site is completely unused for the rest of Pikmin 2. In Pikmin 2 EX, we can assume it is the opposite. Now the gauntlet area is our base camp, and the original base camp will become the new gauntlet. This is fine. Clearly the idea was to generate a new feeling by rearranging the map. However, now the large open area designed to be populated with the armored cannon beetle larvae, which require a large open space to properly fight, has been reduced to an empty plain. There is nothing. On day 2, however, it tries to fix this by adding more orange Bulborbs. The goal is again the same as Pikmin 2, get to the first cave. After growing more Pikmin, our first encounter with a large orange Bulborb begins. Now, as veteran players, we assume this is a normal functioning orange Bulborb and work hard not to prematurely awaken it. Of course, this is a waste of time, but we don't know this. Again, we are being unintentionally deceived. We attack this Bulborb just as we've dealt with them in the past, attack from behind, and continue throwing Pikmin until it goes down. At this point in the game, we have enough Pikmin at our disposal to take him down semi-flawlessly. I lose a couple here, but we assume nothing of this. Everything is functioning as we remember it. This is exactly the same as the encounter with the red Bulborb on day 2 in the regular Pikmin 2. Well, actually, there is one difference. The Bulborb has been placed ridiculously close to the base camp, barely touching the paper bag. What can be seen in the footage is the unfortunate placement caused by the player to be on the slope, which is not a strong suit to Pikmin 2's engine. Slopes just don't work well, and it's evident that I had trouble positioning myself. Watch Jimbo also have trouble completing this task when he did it for the first time playing.
Techie, I'm scared. The next boss I predict is actually Cave Bob with my skin. Alright, how do we deal with this? Just walk around it. Oh, it's a regular board, but it's orange. Ha! Nice try. Kill it. What's happened? Why am I Pikmin not? Why are my Pikmin like, my Pikmin will not throw? I'm spamming A and it's like, frick you. There we go. Alright.
This Bulborb should be repositioned. I could guess that this is an intentional challenge, but that would be a weak argument, as abusing the meta to create a more difficult challenge is borderline Kaizo. And we've been told this ROM hack is supposed to be fair. Purposefully abusing the code to create unnecessary difficult challenges is Kaizo, and if it's not purposeful, it's a mistake. So let's move on. We now see 3 smaller bulborbs with 1 larger one. Again, we play this out as we remember it. We route the small ones out first before tackling the larger one. At this point, the player will likely figure out that the enemy's parameters have been changed and we don't have to worry about it prematurely waking. We will also have likely taken these bulborbs out flawlessly. Again, the strategy hasn't changed since we played Pikmin 2, we think nothing of it. At this point, the player may realize that this is, technically, the advertised step-up of difficulty from Pikmin 2, because there was no second bulborb in the Valley of Repose in the base game. However, this isn't far off from Pikmin 1 in terms of difficulty scaling, so we ignore it. This is a natural increase of difficulty, it's fair. We deal with the first enemy, we deal with a group of enemies. There's no practice needed as these are encounters we are used to as veterans. Even if we were a new player, these, again, are not too far off from Pikmin 1, so again, I consider this generally fair. Before we enter the cave, we're met with another paper bag puzzle. There's an issue with this one. It's just not well placed. Again, it's the problem with slopes. Watch Jimble try to do it. He has a lot of trouble.
Oh god, this is gonna be annoying. Alright, seems to work. There we go. Nice. Configuration, bam. What? Okay, Romeo, chill out, buddy.
So we managed to get ourselves into the cave, and when we enter, we're immediately greeted with a massive amount of whiplash. There is 0 visibility. This is a strange spike in difficulty that we were not prepared for. As veteran players, however, this should be manageable. The space is tight, so navigation should be simple as long as we take it slow and watch the map. We can also use the map, even though the whole icons aren't on there, and sometimes the maps are kind of broken. But we ignore this. This is a ROM hack. There are, however, 3 large bulborbs and a number of smaller bulborbs in this very small space. The difficulty spike has increased again. The closest thing I can relate this to, in Pikmin 2, is the Bulblax Kingdom sublevel 5. They clarify, in less than 10 minutes, the difficulty has gone from Pikmin 2 Day 2 to Pikmin 2 mid-game in just 1 cave. This ROM hack was designed for veteran players after all, so we ignore this and press onwards. With inability to properly see, we attempt fights of the bulborbs. I was quite unsuccessful in my first run, but I'm sure pro players will eat this up no problem. When we bring the bulborbs back to our ship pod, however, the ship prompts us that no energy can be gained like in the regular Pikmin 2. This is not the same experience. We have just been taught that bringing enemies back is a waste of time in this hack, so we don't bother. It does quickly mention that they will be added to the Piklopedia entries if we do take them back, but the Piklopedia entries are optional to begin with, so it's not described as necessary at all to bring corpses back like in the original game. There's no need to. We're told we don't need to, and we don't even think of it, and we're gonna stop, because that's how we've been prompted to think. I should clarify, with the footage being shown, this is actually my second run, and I dilly-dallied on certain sections to clarify my points for the video, getting footage for it. I did not record my first run. I didn't even think I would be making a review, but here we are. This is important later, as my described journey through Sublevel 2 will not match the footage, and there's a couple reasons why, and I'll tackle those. So we continue to the next floor, Sublevel 2, where we are greeted with essentially the same experience, but again more difficult. It's dark, cramped, and again, 3 large bulborbs. As we approach the bulborbs, we are taken by surprise. The hack has programmed in female sheargrubs to spawn as well. These creatures do not harm our Pikmin directly, however they have the possibility to awaken the bulborbs, ruining our chance of a surprise attack. It would be subjective of me to call this Kaizo at this point, but that would be wrong because, as we were told, Pikmin 2 EX aims to make the game harder than the original Pikmin 2, but still keeps things fair, as long as you're willing to take your time and learn enemy patterns. I know these enemy patterns. I've played Pikmin 2. The enemy pattern is to eliminate each sleeping bulborb one by one. 2 at once is dangerous. 3 is suicide. I've never had the experience up to this point of playing Pikmin 2 with what I'm dealing with in this ROM hack. And within this ROM hack, I haven't had the experience up to this point to handle a bulborb that isn't sleeping, let alone 3 at once. This hack assumes the player can handle this no problem, without the need of practice. The best example of this I can give from Pikmin 2 would be the ball bear, but even then, by that point, you would have received this spray mechanic or purple Pikmin to aid in this process. and you were never required to defeat 3 ball bears at once in a very tight space, with no visibility. The visibility is another thing. You cannot properly make out the sheer grubs to attack them, let alone safely dispatch them. This area is so cramped that the enemy will not easily turn off its aggro towards you. The developers created a situation where the player is forced to eliminate these bulborbs under this condition. I have not even mentioned the fire geyser, which is present here. It has also been reprogrammed to be undestroyable, meaning that you are always at the mercy of getting the captains or the Pikmin engulfed in flames. My point in all this is about scaling difficulty. We've gone from an enemy where you have the elements of surprise, an enemy where you have the elements of surprise but has a few other enemies that can be easily taken out first, an enemy where you have the elements of surprise but it's in the dark, to 3 of the enemy with no elements of surprise, in the dark, with a few other enemies that form a distraction and disrupt the flow, in a cramped space, and surrounded by fire. Again, it would be subjective of me to call this Kaizo. There is nothing in base Pikmin 2 game that compares to this experience or difficulty. This is essentially a boss fight. I cannot properly compare this to Pikmin 2. This is an extreme increase in difficulty. The only thing I can possibly think to compare this to is a different game that's completely unrelated. I'm going to bring up Dark Souls. A game that's predicated on being difficult but fair has a similar situation where you have very low visibility and are surrounded by enemies you do not have the element of surprise for. A cave called Tomb of the Giants. This dungeon is considered an endgame area, and every guide strongly recommends acquiring a light source before traversing this cave. Pikmin 2 has an upgrade that allows you for increased visibility. Of course, having it now would lessen the challenge and contradict the narrative presented here, but this is still undoubtedly a huge difficulty spike. There is no place other than this one sublevel where you are in a position to learn the enemy patterns, referring to managing a bulborb whom you don't have the elements of surprise. This would be fine if we were experiencing this in better lighting, one-on-one, or even without any fire. However, because we dispatched all the bulborbs previously without a fuss, without having to learn the enemy patterns, this is something we have unpracticed for up to this point. And there's 3 of them. This is difficulty on par with endgame Pikmin 2, yet it's on the second sublevel of Cave Number 1. It's unfortunate that my gameplay being shown here is not my first experiences, but my second playthrough. There is no genuine reactions here. I'm prepared for every event, so I'm far more careful and more strategic. But this is due to getting practice the first run. This ROM hack required me, a casual player, to complete this cave twice, though, in order to be successful. Actually, this is wrong, because in my first run, I actually went through it twice. And that's because I lost too many Pikmin initially. What's being pictured here is a casual player who has run this cave 3 times, twice in practice, before they were able to complete it absolutely successfully in one single run. Compare this to the Emergence Cavern, which is a cave designed to be successful and have a successful run on attempt number 1 by any player. It's designed to be forgiving and simple. This ROM hack is designed to be unforgiving, difficult, and it's done this through abusing the meta. Another point I have is that unfortunately the gameplay I recorded did not feature the event of a sheer grub accidentally waking up a bulborb. Meanwhile, my first run had a spawn that caused all 3 bulborbs to be awoken simultaneously when I even just got close to them. I don't think this is an intentional design, as that would be abuse of the code for a challenge based on the meta of the game, which could be considered Kaizo. I think I was just unlucky. However, this should be viewed as more evidence to reveal that this cave has an intense spike in difficulty that forces the player to adapt quickly with little time to practice. Okay, we need to move on to sublevel 3. By getting down to the 3rd floor, we were relieved of the low visibility and were greeted with a purple flower, similar to Pikmin 2's first cave. This is how we get purple Pikmin. Major gameplay difference here, however, is that the flower here functions as an infinite exchange for purple Pikmin. It is not limited to only 5. Okay, this is a new experience. Now we have choice over how many purple Pikmin we desire. We can very easily give ourselves 100 purple Pikmin immediately in this situation. I'm going to make a subjective comment here. I would hate this in Pikmin 2. Purple Pikmin are designed to be a rarity and something we take good care of. Losing purple Pikmin was enough for a reset for me when I played. By limiting the amount, it instructed me on how many purple Pikmin I should have at whatever point in the game. For example, I should have no more than 10 purple Pikmin by day 3, theoretically. I am aware that there are workarounds to get more, But my point still stands, Nintendo limited the amount on purpose. You had to put more pressure on how many you used. They carried more weight, figuratively and literally. At this point, while playing, I realized that they had been likely nerfed. The developer modified them to gut them of their powerful attacking abilities. They now only carry 10 times their weight and do the stun. They have lost significance because of this. Ideally, if purple Pikmin were implemented into Pikmin 2, with only the weight carrying bonus and that alone, then having them be a cave exclusive would be detrimental. They have lost most of their value as useful units in combat. They seem even worse than blues and yellows in attack power now. Of course, this creates a dilemma for the player. In Pikmin 2, purple Pikmin was almost like an upgrade. You got to choose 10, and only 10, of your red Pikmin to be upgraded into a stronger form. The game knew you only had 10, and it scaled accordingly. In Pikmin 2 EX, we are told we can choose however many we want to upgrade. However, now it's a downgrade. How many fighter class Pikmin should we sacrifice for this carrying class Pikmin? There is no clear answer. We could switch all of our reds over, unaware of the consequences. Nothing is made clear on the right choice. We aren't even really given time to practice with these new purples, or how many purples we may need for a treasure later on. Even if you assume that you'll probably eventually need 100 purple Pikmin to carry something, that is a sacrifice of 100 of your valuable fighter class red Pikmin. I should also note, this hack goes out of its way to warn you that to have at least one red Pikmin in your party regardless, because if you don't, this causes a Pikmin extinction. This is a nice touch, but also illustrates the flawed nature of giving you unlimited freedom in this regard. With all these changes surrounding them, purple Pikmin should just be discoverable on the overworld like yellows or blues, or even just removed entirely. They now only serve to gate off certain treasures that happen to go over the 100 Pikmin limit. Pikmin 2 only had 3 of these. I'm worried that this hack will be chock full of them. In that event, you'll never know if you'll ever have to bring 20 or 30 or 40 purple Pikmin into a cave just to collect one absurdly heavy treasure. In fact, you do later on in this demo. There's a pinecone treasure that requires exactly 100 Pikmin to carry, but due to the limitations of the game, it actually prevents 100 individual Pikmin to carry it at once. It stops at its natural limit of like 40 or something, requiring you to absolutely have purple Pikmin to collect it. It's impossible without them.
I'm gonna have to restart the entire day.
This is worse than underground treasures requiring you to bring white Pikmin into a cave that has no other use for them. At least then, you only needed to bring one white Pikmin into a cave for those treasures. This is abuse of the meta in order to make a more difficult experience. No one's going to be bringing just one purple into a cave. It wouldn't work with this 100 heavy treasure. Basically, purples have been reduced to only serving this single function, and you have to bring them into caves just in case. The concept of nerfing purples is a tricky subject to begin with. The pro players dislike how purple Pikmin decrease the challenge of most encounters with enemies. Casual players, such as myself, rely on purple Pikmin's strengths for the harder parts of the game. Pikmin 3 did not use purple Pikmin in-game, but it also didn't spam a large number of difficult encounters like Pikmin 2 does in the endgame caves. It is clear that Pikmin 2 is a game designed to make use of purple Pikmin. It's a very difficult game without them. Now they're being nerfed into a hack that's already inherently more difficult. Again, it's subjective of me to call this Kaizo. Back to the walkthrough. This game does force you to settle on at least 30 purple Pikmin in order to collect the treasure of the floor, which requires 300 Pikmin to carry. This is following the same beats as Pikmin 2, and this heavy treasure unlocks the next landing zone in the overworld. Of course, like Pikmin 2, it requires purples to carry. But unlike Pikmin 2, this ROM hack once again attempts to be difficult but fair, and places 2 fire geysers on the way back to the ship pod. Again, they cannot be destroyed. The treasure must be carried over them. When the cutscene plays to tell you Pikmin are suffering, when the purples will naturally succumb to the flames in the process of carrying it, you can very easily lose 1 or 2 due to the delay in the active gameplay the cutscene causes. Now, this has nothing to do with the hack, this is just a problem with Pikmin 2. It's just unfortunate the casual players will see this here, which is meant to be an introductory cave to begin with. The only possible way to avoid your purples from being burned is through trial and error, or managing to selectively place the purples on both ends of the treasure to avoid casualties. But this is another spike in difficulty. We weren't given any time to practice dodging flames with any Pikmin other than red Pikmin. But I guess as veteran players, we just have to work through this. The player is forced to leave the cave at this point. There is more sub-levels, but white Pikmin are required to progress. Of course, I already stated that I went in there later on anyways, and it crashed the game. The only thing notable was the inclusion of a retextured Dweevil enemy. Again, this is deception. But subjectively, I enjoyed this deception because this genuinely put me in a panic. I had no idea what ability it possessed, and I haven't been afraid of an enemy in Pikmin in a long time, and for that, I am very impressed. It was such a simple change, but it made all the difference. Once the cave is complete, the day ends, just like in Pikmin 2, and the characters are given the opportunity to explore a new area, a reimagining of the Awakening Wood. It's a beautiful area. There is nothing to dispute here. This is a well-crafted, aesthetically pleasing location. Interestingly, even though the game takes place during the day, the forest is in pitch darkness. There is a critical flaw here, however. This is during autumn. The leaves are falling. Even with most leaves still in the trees, in broad daylight, there is no possible way for this forest to be this dark. The entire map is staged in a clearing to begin with. There is no actual trees visible on the actual map that we stand and walk on. Furthermore, in the opening of Pikmin 2, it is clearly pictured that the collision with a tree caused a crash landing of sorts. This cannot be understated. This makes no logical sense. How did they land their ship in the denseness of this dark forest when they could barely make it through trees with bare branches? Light should be at least making it through to the center of the map, where there is, theoretically, no tree coverage. Even the end of the day cinematic, there is a little cutscene that reveals the true denseness of all the forests. Whether or not we actually take this at face value or assume that this is merely an aesthetic design for the cutscene, it contradicts the narrative being presented in this hack, while it contradicted nothing in the original Pikmin 2. I guess you can call this a nitpick, but it's clear that this choice to make it dark was chosen for increasing difficulty, because the first map had rather low lighting as well. On the subject of low lighting, it is a gameplay design that, when used frequently, only hinders the player. This is a very artificial way to increase difficulty and should be used sparingly. It is impossible to see anything. How is the player supposed to properly strategize in the darkness? How is the player supposed to practice learning enemy patterns in darkness? In caves, it is manageable since there is no time limit, but overworld levels have a time limit. The only thing keeping me going was my background knowledge of the Awakening Wood burned into my brain from playing the game so much. You cannot keep relying on the crux that darkening the game makes it more difficult. It just becomes a gimmick. Video games give you a brightness setting for a reason. Different monitors produce different images. Do not expect every player to be accepting or comfortable with this decision. My monitor has terrible contrast. This was subjectively infuriating, but objectively this is just an easy way to increase difficulty in an already difficult experience. Like the last map, this map is also a backwards version of the original Pikmin 2 map of the Awakening Wood. This time you start where you discover blue Pikmin in the original game. Thankfully, the Awakening Wood was not designed to be a half-tutorial, half-gauntlet, so the map has good potential for mixed-up geography. There was a yellow onion on the map, but it is not possible to reach. It has been artificially gated off as progressing further would go beyond the demo. Now I will note that, while there is no reason to try this, if you walk into an electric fence, it will instantly kill a captain. There is no warning that this is a danger or that this will happen. This is an extremely grueling punishment for such a simple mistake. Losing a Pikmin to electricity is fine, you learn from it, you continue playing. But losing a captain instantly removes a number of play options instantaneously. Inside caves, the electric hazards thankfully don't instantly kill you, but they do decrease your active captain's health down to 1/3. The electric hazards also never turn off. They are permanently emitting lightning. This is a brutal modification. But again, it's subjective of me to call this Kaizo. You avoid the electric gates and make your way past more bulborbs. Then you approach a wonderfully dressed area that is comprised of a field of bushes. This is new for the series and it should be appreciated. However, the threat within the bushes is male sheargrubs. I do not know if their parameters were modified to have more health, but honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised. There is a large number of them, and they are only detectable by sound. The bushes obscure your vision on top of the low lighting. There is more sheargrubs in this one spot than at any point in Pikmin 2, and they are a complete surprise. This is an ambush, and it is also spam. There is no strategy involved here. You cannot see them. You must tread blindly, attempting to eliminate them with a C-stick as it is impossible to aim a throw. This entire encounter, while brand new for the series in construction, is painfully desperate at trying to kill as many Pikmin as it can and be as difficult as possible. For comparison, in Pikmin 2, the road to the second cave is blocked by 3 notable subjects: berries used for the ultra spicy spray, the encounter with the cloaking burrow nit, and the encounter with the creeping chrysanthemum. The berries are here to give you an upgrade, to make the game easier for you, and the 2 enemies are to teach you how to fight them. They are considerably different than the enemies you face up to this point, as they hide in plain sight, but are waiting to ambush you. It's not a surprise like the sheer grubs, but they are more dangerous encounters individually. By placing them one at a time, they teach you how to handle each of these encounters one at a time. When you finally make it through, you will find the second and final cave of this demo. In order to enter, you must make use of one of the pairs of the weight, scale, blocks, seesaws, whatever you call them. Now, in the original game, the first encounter with this weight block, it is initially a puzzle. A simple puzzle of how to get one captain and half your party up onto a higher ledge. From there, you open a shortcut. It is used later in 2 other instances for puzzles to get Pikmin into a spot they cannot normally reach. In all these instances, it is used once and never again. The block pair in this demo, I guess you can count as a puzzle, but because most veteran players already know how to solve it, it's not really a problem anymore. It's not exactly a puzzle anymore. It's an unnecessary hindrance that keeps you from entering the cave, and unlike the previous block pairs, this one will be required to repeat every time you wish to re-enter the cave. Furthermore, the actual process to get up there is botched. In order to enter a cave with your Pikmin, they must be in the party of the active captain that touches the cave. This is an impossible process to complete with 100 Pikmin. You will most likely get the one captain up on the ledge, and whistle the other captain with the party on the ground, which bypasses the need to bring your Pikmin party up to the cave entrance entirely. Logically, this makes no sense. How are the Pikmin entering the cave if they physically cannot get them in there within the gameplay itself? The narrative is being tested here by the meta gameplay, and so is the player's suspension of disbelief. In order to complete this task of entering the cave, you must abuse the mechanics of the game. This further illustrates the fact that this hack is designed for veterans, and specifically expert-level players. And the use of meta gameplay contradicts the narrative, which is desiring to be an original and new Pikmin story. Also, I encountered a few glitches with these weight blocks that I really need to be looked at. For one, it is possible to get a Pikmin or a captain stuck between the block and the wall. This isn't lethal or anything, but this is lethal. Difficult, but fair. The only possible solution I can think of is to put one of the stick bridges there. Or just don't put the cave in a spot not built for captains to get to anyway. Watch Jimble discover and complete this puzzle involving the block weights.
What is this, Techie? What is this? Why are there 3 of them? Alright, one Pikmin. Wait, hold on. Alright, that's nice. Go faster! Got him. Alright. We're in there, baby. I got it. I got it. Alright, chill out. With 41 of... Don't save, why not? Wait, what did happen to all my Pikmin?
Probably the most glaring issue is how he lost half of his Pikmin party from just entering the cave. Whether or not there was a time pressure on him, this is poor design because it allows for errors to occur. So we enter the cave and discover it has more light inside than there was on the overworld map. Yeah. The sublevels all kind of blur together. They are littered with a number of enemies, including more bulborbs, sheargrubs, and, newly introducing, shearwigs, skitterleafs, cloaking burrow nits, and creeping chrysanthemums. These are crowded, narrow, maze-like floors. The light, thankfully, makes them seemingly manageable, but the fire geysers and spam of enemies do not help. Jimble notices something I failed to notice, another unnecessary change to make the hack difficult, but fair.
Say goodbye to that red Pikmin. Pathetic. Why, Techie? Why would you do that? Why do they f***ing burn so much quicker now? Techie, it's extremely unfair how quickly they die from fire. Like, extremely unfair.
Again, with my comment on how the Pikmin are suffering cutscene basically handicaps you, this is a recipe for disaster. The worst offenders is the skitterleafs, which have their parameters changed to begin moving away from you at much farther range than the original game. And of course, they wake the bulborbs up. This is a deliberate design choice, it says in the Piklopedia entries, which I checked afterwards, and each entry gives what I assume is helpful advice on how to strategize against these enemies. However, seeing this helpful advice at the end of the day, long after dealing with them in the cave, is not helpful whatsoever. Pikmin 2 never needed advice in the entries because it introduced the enemies slowly to you, and you learned to deal with them as they came. Furthermore, the beginning of the game tells you that collecting enemies has much less value to begin with. It only quickly reminds us that it'll create Piklopedia entries if we carry them back. The casual player will not be collecting bodies as they are told not to. Meanwhile, pro players are skilled enough not to require helpful advice to begin with, so they also won't be collecting bodies. This ROM hack makes changes to the parameters of the enemies to create new experiences, and that is a great concept. However, in gameplay it fails to properly teach the player the means to learn the strategies to deal with these enemies in a manageable environment. The first time you encounter a skitterleaf is among a horde of other enemies. The first time you were tested to deal with an awake bulborb is when there are 3 of them, in the dark, and surrounded by fire. I talked to Jimble while playing the game the original time. This was our chat messages. I said, "I hope the game isn't too Kaizo." Jimble wrote, "It isn't. You just have to be strategic. It's specifically designed to require pure strategy when fighting. Kaizo is just spamming enemies."
How big is this f***ing cave? Oh, hello, I didn't even see you. Why did you make them fly so f***ing high, damn it, Techie? Oh my god. This cave's too big for me. Yeah, it's a bit f***ing crazy, Techie. What the f*** is this cave? Techie, I'm gonna be honest, a lot of this cave just kind of feels like spam. Just spam through Pikmin everywhere. And that's not very fun.
Jimble, didn't you just say this isn't spam? Because this isn't Kaizo? For context, Jimble is a much better player at Pikmin than I am. I know this ROM hack was likely fun for him. However, his thoughts on what Kaizo is left me worried about the future of Pikmin hacking. This is enemy spam. I hope I don't need to prove this. This is creating artificial difficulty on top of artificial difficulty. Nerfing purple Pikmin in a game that was built around them being overpowered is one thing, but everything else? This second cave is on par with the likes of the Cavern of Chaos, or Hole of Heroes, or the Dream Den. This second cave is already at the difficulty of endgame Pikmin 2. The question lies, what could possibly be done next? How could this possibly be any more difficult? What will the final cavern be? The original description states this is not as difficult as Lands of Torture, but by its endgame, how could it not be? How do you continue difficulty scaling at this speed and value? The demo ends with the rest of the cave introducing white Pikmin, which are exactly the same, but also they share that new gimmick where you can create as many white Pikmin as you want. I have another nitpick that I strongly suggest fixing, and it is an easy one to fix. The dialogue in the cutscene when white Pikmin are first eaten, which poisons the enemy. The captain states that they are venomous. This is incorrect. The term venomous refers to an animal that can transfer toxic chemicals through a bite. The correct term is poisonous, which is used for plants and animals that carry toxic chemicals in their body that can poison you if you ingest them. A spider is venomous because it bites you. A mushroom is poisonous because when you eat it, it poisons you. These are not interchangeable words. You could argue that the Captain Romeo is unfamiliar with the difference between the two terms, but I think this is a bit of a stretch. I imagine he is an intelligent being. There is a boss on the final sublevel that is a reskinned beady Longlegs, which is cool looking, but it has an extreme amount of health. Maybe I was playing incorrectly, but this battle is artificially lengthened longer than necessary, raising the concern that every boss battle will end up this way. I lost a few Pikmin in this footage because I was incompetent. Just ignore that. But watch Jimble do it. He was playing an older version of the demo, so the area looks a bit different, and thankfully it was changed.
What is that? You only gave me one! What the f- not 3 seconds, but not in 12 minutes. No, Amprat, you don't suck. Pikmin 2EX is just a little bit ridiculous. Techie, you probably haven't even beaten this. This is the most interesting boss battle I've ever played, Techie. I do like the colors on him, though. I'll give you that. He does look really cool. Or it. He's almost dead. Bam! Finally. 50 years later.
Thus concludes the demo. The final version is slated to be ready this summer sometime. And I hope it does. I want to keep playing this, and I want to discover more it has to offer aesthetically, as well as see the creative abuse of the source code that creates even worse challenges. I do have a few more notes, but it's entirely subjective and they're kind of nitpicks. The custom music used is wonderful. I understand the references being used, and it's fun to hear these songs in the Pikmin 2 sound font. They sound nice. However, these songs lack the interactivity of the original music. The original soundtrack changes depending on what is occurring near the player character, and this is one of the notable strengths of the Pikmin franchise, especially Pikmin 2. And you've basically removed it for some references to other games. These are great songs, 100%. I love these songs, but this is still a Pikmin game. The ROM hack has a narrative. It presents itself as if it were an actual Pikmin game. It takes itself seriously, ignoring the points where it absolutely contradicts itself with the use of meta-commentary, but regardless, make a choice. Is this a game for hardcore pro veteran players? Then don't worry about crafting a narrative. At that point, it might as well be a meme hack. If you wish for an entirely original game, then absolutely keep a narrative, but keep the meta-commentary out of it. The next point is another nitpick, but I want to try and bring solid evidence to raise it beyond something that's subjective. The Pikmin series takes place on Earth. This is absolutely confirmed at this point. Humanity is gone, sure, we don't know why, but this is still planet Earth. We assume that the relative laws of planet Earth are still at play here, which is why there should be no reason why these characters should state that the solar cycle is anything other than 24 hours. This is a video game. Very rarely do you ever see a video game with a full 24-hour clock. This is restricting the player and the game. Days are shortened to a manageable length in a game as a mechanic. If the days were actually 24 hours, Pikmin would be a very different game. We have to suspend our disbelief and accept that while the game has a short day length, In the canon of the lore, the days are in fact 24 hours. The guidebook for Pikmin 2 mentions that the reason why time does not pass underground is because of strong magnetic fields. This is ludicrous. Sure, electromagnetic radiation can, in special cases, have small effects on time. However, there is no possible way that stepping underground stops time on the surface. No kind of science allows this. The lowest dry land on Earth goes about 400 meters below sea level, and time does not stop. We know this because people live there. Space-time is a complicated subject, and it is not the answer here. Earth is not spinning 200 times faster and causing 20-minute days. The Earth does not stop time when you step underground. These are gameplay features. We do not need an explanation for gameplay features. The canon is 24 hours, regardless of the mechanics. There is a goddamn treasure in Pikmin 2 that is literally a clock depicting 24 hours. There is no dispute here. Olimar's notes on this clock says, "While exploring this warped land, I got the feeling that time passed faster than usual. Upon researching it further, I realized it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But whenever I touch this object, I feel the space-time continuum bending. This is just a joke." It acknowledges that yes, the game has 20-minute days. But Olimar confirms this as false and implies that the normal characteristic we intelligent beings feel is that time speeds as we age. Meanwhile, this hack is using meta-dialogue within a framework that is meant to be genuine, treating this as fact. It was a mistake when Nintendo wrote a botched explanation for the mechanics on cave exploration. It was a mistake for this hack to repeat this with explaining how much time there is in each day. Oh, I really hope I made it clear at which points of this video were my subjective thoughts and what was the objective truth. I'm trying to practice separating them, and please correct me if I was wrong anywhere. In conclusion, I have learned a great lesson on how Nintendo introduced a flow to Pikmin 2's design and the difficulty scaling it possessed. I consider this a great lesson for the entire Pikmin hacking community. I never want you guys to stop, and I really like this ROM hack. It's just, it has some glaring issues in balance and scale of difficulty. There is enemy spam, and the low lighting is a significant problem. I have supplied enough evidence to safely say that this is Kaizo, undoubtedly. And this time it's not an opinion. My evidence paints a good picture of this being true. Now, I don't want to trample on the creator's parade. If your intent is for it to be incredibly difficult, then you need to remarket it. I, a casual, was misadvertised a painful experience. I was not prepared, and thus I have mixed feelings on it. It is still a beautifully crafted in terms of aesthetics for a ROM hack, and it shows a lot of love that you have for the franchise. All that was needed is more room for the player to practice and learn the strategies needed to complete your challenges. There is no in-game time limit, so there's no need to punish the player immediately. Let them learn how to play your ROM hack. I ask from this community, just try and remember the casuals out here. I want more Pikmin, badly. You can have Kaizo difficulty, just save it for the end game, not the first cave you enter. When I tried to describe this ROM hack to my sister, she said, "Did they even playtest it?" jokingly. I got the exact same response from my other online friends. Although their voices don't mean much since they got a biased delivery of the information from me, I thought it was worth noting. I trust that this was playtested. I'm sure it was. There's no way it wasn't. But I hope that my playtesting and my review will encourage a new philosophy moving forward. Thanks for watching, and sorry this was an hour long.